Hello, and welcome to Sound Sleep, a storytelling podcast with curated audio, specifically designed to improve the quality of your sleep. I am your host, Adam. Thanks for joining me. Did you know there are even more stories in the Sound Sleep premium feed? Well, when you support this podcast, you'll get ad-free episodes, 2 monthly bonus episodes, and get early releases, all for less than $1 a week. Subscribe from either Apple Podcasts or Supercast and listen directly in your favorite podcast player. It's quick and easy. Go to soundsleeppodcast.com or look in the show notes for more information. And thanks so much for your continued support. The next story was so much fun to read. I hope you enjoy it too. If you'd like to tell me what you think, feel free to let me know with a review and a rating, or send me a message on Instagram or in the Facebook group. I truly love to hear from you. Take a few deep breaths, feeling the breath move in and out of your body. As you close your eyes, allow your mind to wander to a peaceful countryside setting. Imagine yourself driving along a winding road, surrounded by lush green fields and rolling hills. The sun is shining, and a warm breeze flows through the open car windows. As you continue on your journey, take in all of the sights and sounds around you. Notice the wildflowers blooming along the side of the road, and the birds singing in the trees. Feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, and the gentle rocking of the car as you drive. As you come to a stop at a scenic overlook, take a moment to appreciate the breathtaking view. Take in the vast expanse of the landscape and allow yourself to feel a sense of awe and wonder at the beauty of nature. Take another deep breath in and exhale. As we begin our story, continue with a few more deep breaths, preparing your mind and body to be ready for a peaceful and sound sleep. The Badger and the Bear. On the edge of a forest, there lived a large family of badgers. In the ground, their dwelling was made. Its walls and roof were covered with rocks and straw. Old Father Badger was a great hunter. He knew well how to track the deer and buffalo. every day he came home carrying on his back some wild game. This kept Mother Badger very busy, and the baby badgers very chubby. While the well-fed children played about, digging little make-believe dwellings, their mother hung thin sliced meats upon long willow racks. As fast as the meats were dried and seasoned by sun and wind, she packed them carefully away in a large, thick bag. This bag was like a huge, stiff envelope, but far more beautiful to see, for it was painted all over with many bright colors. These firmly tied bags of dried meat were laid upon the rocks in the walls of the dwelling. In this way, they were both useful and decorative. One day, Father Badger did not go off for a hunt. He stayed at home, making new arrows. His children sat about him on the ground floor. Their small black eyes danced with delight as they watched the gay colors painted upon the arrows. All of a sudden, there was heard a heavy footfall near the entranceway. The oval-shaped doorframe was pushed aside. In stepped a large black foot with great big claws. Then, the other clumsy foot came next. All the while, the baby badger stared hard at the unexpected comer. After the second foot, in peeped the head of a big, black bear. His black nose was dry and parched. Silently, he entered the dwelling and sat down on the ground by the doorway. His black eyes never left the painted bags on the rocky walls. He guessed what was in them. He was a very hungry bear. Seeing the racks of red meat hanging in the yard, he had come to visit the Badger family. Though he was a stranger, and his strong paws and jaws frightened the small badgers, the father said, How, friend? Your lips and nose look feverish and hungry. Will you eat with us?" "Yes, my friend," said the bear. "I am starved. I saw your racks of red fresh meat, and knowing your heart is kind, I came hither. Give me meat to eat, my friend." Hereupon, the mother badger took long strides across the room, and as she had to pass in front of the strange visitor, she said, "Aha! Excuse me, allow me to pass," which was an apology. How, replied the bear, drawing himself closer to the wall and crossing his chins together. Mother Badger chose the most tender red meat, and soon, over a bed of coals, she broiled the venison. That day, the bear had all he could eat. At nightfall, he rose, and smacking his lips together, that is the way of saying the food was very good, he left the badger dwelling. The baby badgers, peeping through the door flap after the shaggy bear, saw him disappear into the woods nearby. Day after day, the crackling of twigs in the forest told of heavy footsteps. Out would come the same black bear. He never lifted the door flap, but thrusting it aside entered slowly in. Always in the same place by the entranceway, he sat down with crossed shins. His daily visits were so regular that Mother Badger placed a fur rug in his place. She did not wish a guest in her dwelling to sit upon the bare, hard ground. At last, one time when the bear returned, his nose was bright and black. His coat was glossy. He had grown fat upon the badger's hospitality. As he entered the dwelling, a pair of wicked gleams shot out of his shaggy head. Surprised by the strange behavior of the guest who remained standing upon the rug, leaning his round back against the wall, Father Badger queried, "How, my friend? What? What?" The bear took one stride forward and shook his paw in the badger's face. He said, "I am strong, very strong." "Yes, yes, so you are," replied the badger. From the farther end of the room, Mother Badger muttered over her beadwork. "Yes, you grew strong from our well-filled bowls." The bear smiled, showing a row of sharp, large teeth. "I have no dwelling. I have no bags of dried meat. I have no arrows. All these I have found here on this spot," said he, stamping his heavy foot. "I want them. See? I am strong," repeated he, lifting both his terrible paws. Quietly, the Father Badger spoke. "I fed you. I called you friend, though you came here a stranger and a beggar. For the sake of my little ones, leave us in peace." Mother Badger, in her excited way, had pierced hard through the buck's skin and stuck her fingers repeatedly with her sharp awl until she had laid aside her work. Now, while her husband was talking to the bear, she motioned with her hands to the children. On tiptoe, they hastened to her side. For reply came a low growl. It grew larger, louder, and more fierce. The bear roared, and by force hurled the badgers out. First the Father Badger, then the mother. The little badgers he tossed by pairs. He threw them hard upon the ground, standing in the entranceway and showing his ugly teeth. He snarled, "Be gone!" The Father and Mother Badger, having gained their feet, picked up their kicking little babes and, wailing aloud, drew the air into their flattened lungs till they could stand alone upon their feet. No sooner had the baby badgers caught their breath than they howled and shrieked with pain and fright. Ah, what a dismal cry was theirs as the whole badger family went forth, wailing from out their own dwelling. A little distance away from their stolen house, the Father Badger built a small round hut. He made it of bent willows and covered it with dry grass and twigs. This was shelter for the night, but alas, it was empty of food and arrows. All day Father Badger prowled through the forest, but without his arrows, he could not get food for his children. Upon his return, the cry of the little ones for meat, the sad quiet of the mother with bowed head, hurt him like a poisoned arrow wound. "I'll beg meat for you," said he, covering his head and entire body in a long, loose robe. He halted beside the big bear. The bear was slicing red meat to hang upon the rack. He did not pause for a look at the comer. As the badger stood there unrecognized, he saw that the bear had brought with him his whole family. Little cubs played under the high-hanging new meats. They laughed and pointed with their wee noses upward at the thin, sliced meats upon the poles. "Have you no heart, Black Bear? My children are starving. Give me a small piece of meat for them," begged the badger. The angry bear growled and pounced upon the badger. "Begone," said he. With his big hind foot, he sent the father badger sprawling on the ground. All the little ruffian bears hooted and shouted to see the beggar fall upon his face. There was no one, however, who did not even smile. He was the youngest cub. His fur coat was not as black and glossy as those his elders wore. The hair was dry and dingy. It looked much more like kinky wool. He was the ugly cub. Poor little baby bear. He had always been laughed at by his older brothers. He could not help being himself. He could not change the differences between himself and his brothers. Thus again, though the rest laughed aloud at the badger's fall, he did not see the joke. His face was long and earnest. In his heart, he was sad to see the badgers crying and starving. In his breast spread a burning desire to share his food with them. "I shall not ask my father for meat to give away. He would say no. Then my brothers would laugh at me," said the ugly baby bear to himself. In an instant, as if his good intention had passed from him, he was singing happily and skipping around his father at work, singing in his small, high voice and dragging his feet in long strides after him, as if a prankish spirit oozed out from his heels. He strayed off through the tall grass. He was ambling toward the small round hut, when directly in front of the entranceway, he made a quick side kick with his left hind leg. There fell into the badger's hut a piece of fresh meat. It was tough meat, full of sinews. Yet it was the only piece he could take without his father's notice. Thus having given the meat to the hungry badgers, the ugly bear ran quickly away to his father again. On the following day, the father badger came back once more. He stood watching the big bear cutting thin slices of meat. "Give me," he began, when the bear, turning upon him with a growl, thrust him cruelly aside. The badger fell on his hands. He fell where the grass was wet with the blood of the newly carved buffalo. His keen, starving eyes caught sight of a little red clot lying bright upon the green. Looking fearfully toward the bear, and seeing his head was turned away, he snatched up the small, thick blood. Underneath his girdled blanket, he hid it in his hand. On his return to his family, he said within himself, "I'll pray the Great Spirit to bless it." Thus, he built a small round lodge. Sprinkling water upon the heated heap of sacred stones within, he made ready to purge his body. The buffalo blood, too, must be purified before I ask a blessing upon it, thought the badger. He carried it into the sacred vapor lodge. After placing it near the sacred stones, he sat down beside it. After a long silence, he muttered, "Great Spirit, bless this little buffalo blood." Then he rose, and with a quiet dignity, stepped out of the lodge. Close behind him, someone followed. The badger turned to look over his shoulder, and to his great joy, he beheld a Dakota brave in handsome buckskins. In his hand, he carried a magic arrow. Across his back dangled a long, fringed quiver. In answer to the badger's prayer, the avenger had sprung from out the red globules. "My son!" exclaimed the badger with extended right hand. "How, father?" replied the brave. "I am your avenger." Immediately, the badger told the sad story of his hungry little ones and the stingy bear. Listening closely, the young man stood looking steadily upon the ground. At length, the father badger moved away. "Where?" queried the avenger. "My son, we have no food. I am going again to beg for meat," answered the badger. "Then I will go with you," replied the young brave. This made the old badger happy. He was proud of his son. He was delighted to be called father by the first human creature. The bear saw the badger coming in the distance. He narrowed his eyes at the tall stranger walking beside him. He spied the arrow. At once, he guessed it was the avenger, of whom he had long heard, long ago. As they approached, the bear stood erect, with a hand on his thigh. He smiled upon them. "How, badger, my friend? Here is my knife. Cut your favorite pieces from the deer," said he, holding out a long, thin blade. "How?" said the badger eagerly. He wondered what had inspired the big bear to such a generous deed. The young avenger waited till the badger took the long knife in his hand. Gazing full into the black bear's face, he said, "I come to do justice. You have returned only a knife to my poor father. Now, return to him his dwelling." His voice was deep and powerful. In his black eyes burned a steady fire. The long, strong teeth of the bear rattled against each other, and his shaggy body shook with fear. "Oh!" cried he, as if he had been shot. Running into the dwelling, he gasped, breathless and trembling. Come out, all of you. This is the badger's dwelling. We must flee to the forest for fear of the Avenger who carries the magic arrow. Out they hurried, all the bears, and disappeared into the woods. Singing and laughing, the badgers returned to their own dwelling. Then the Avenger left them. "I go," said he in parting, "over the earth